Alright, so this is a suggestion via Patreon. The name of the video is Why Europe Doesn't Build Skyscrapers. Let's check it out. This is coming from the B1M.
Why aren't there many skyscrapers in Europe? Despite being one of the most developed, densely populated and economically prosperous continents, Europe has surprisingly few skyscrapers, particularly when compared to Asia and North America.
Okay, really quickly. All right, so I live part-time in Europe, guys. I can definitely tell you that they're not going to tear down these ancient buildings, bro. They're not. That could be one absolute reason why. Could be. I mean, think about it. If you're comparing to the United States of America, or even Dubai, or even some multiple parts of China, right? Specifically, these are like places where the land was already open to be taken, guys. Like, these were not absolutely like sprawling metropolises of ancient buildings. Like living in the Malaga region of Spain, Costa del Sol, I can tell you right now, these buildings are 600-700 years old, bro. They're not tearing them down to put up a modern structure. Okay, you'd have to probably find a dead area somewhere to build a brand new capital city, which they're not going to do, guys.
Of the 218 skyscrapers constructed on the continent to date, 66% of them are located in just 5 cities: London, Paris, Frankfurt, Moscow, and Istanbul. So why have other major European cities not embraced the skyscraper? How do they thrive without the significant inner urban space and floor areas that these clever structures provide?
Pretty easily.
Is everything about to change in our increasingly urbanized world?
Let's go. Let's hear their opinion, guys.
When skyscrapers first rose to prominence in the 19th century, first in Chicago and later in New York, many European cities were already firmly established, with grand historic buildings and public spaces that left little room for large new structures.
Right.
Most of Europe's cities around that time were also more evenly zoned, and were not facing the high demand for floor space in key districts that typically drives high-rise development. Additionally, as the power and influence of North America began to grow, a cultural rivalry emerged between Americans who saw Europe's class system as outdated, and Europeans who saw some American ideals as eroding traditions and the European way of life. As a result, each continent became wary of adopting the other's concepts. While North America aims to become the model for a new age, Europe sought to preserve its heritage. While this explains why skyscraper construction didn't initially catch on in Europe, it doesn't explain what has held the continent back since.
Okay.
In the wake of the Second World War, many thought European cities would modernize and replicate the skyscrapers that were rising across North America.
No, they just went right back to it.
However, in Western Europe, where many cities lost landmark and historic structures, an overwhelming desire to restore what had been destroyed took hold.
Nostalgia.
In addition, the lower population of Europe at that time meant that the demand for floor area that principally drives skyscraper construction wasn't there. As a result, modest structures replaced buildings that could not be saved or restored. Meanwhile, in Eastern Europe, the expanding Soviet Union's rebuild effort consisted largely of mid-rise repetitive structures that sought to rehouse much of the population. It was during this time that Europe saw its first skyscrapers begin to rise, not in response to growth and prosperity, but in an effort by the Soviets to indicate their power and influence. While Brussels has never constructed a true skyscraper, it is partly responsible for the lack of skyscrapers across the continent. Without any significant zoning regulations in place, the 1960s saw many buildings in the city demolished to make way for large, modern structures that had little regard for architectural or cultural value. Recognizing the damage this indiscriminate redevelopment was doing to the city, many prominent figures and architects coined the term Brusselization, and lobbied to introduce new planning laws. These regulations significantly limited the scale of new buildings and required historic facades to be restored and incorporated into new developments, preserving the cultural fabric of the city. The row in Brussels led to a general dislike for modern buildings across Europe, with many seeing them as bland or soulless.
I mean, they are. They're extremely bland and soulless. They're just there to bring in more people to a very specific region. You kind of just defined it. But yeah, they are bland. I mean, they're nice to look at, kind of, right? But they absolutely have no soul. They have no... There's nothing in them, guys.
In response, numerous cities adopted similar regulations and set aside controlled districts, like Paris's La Défense,
like high-rise bands.
High-rise development away from historic centres. By the start of the 21st century, attitudes around tall buildings were softening across the continent, as architectural trends moved away from box-like structures towards more unique designs, and as the world became increasingly globalised. Since the early 2000s, major financial centres like London, Paris, Moscow, Istanbul and Frankfurt have seen several skyscrapers rise.
Guys, for some reason... Oh, Europe. Okay, I was about to say for a second. I was about to say, guys, we are not talking about Singapore's absolutely gorgeous skyline.
As demand for commercial space in their centres has increased.
Europe. Okay.
By contrast, smaller European cities that have been experiencing more modest growth have turned their focus to the environment and improving living standards for citizens. In recent years, urban areas in Scandinavia and Central Europe have consistently ranked among the highest in the world for sustainability, happiness and well-being, while maintaining importance within their national economies. However, skyscraper construction in the cities of today is no longer driven purely by economic growth or the need for commercial office space.
Okay.
With 60% of the global human population set to be living in urban areas by 2030, residential skyscrapers are now rising in prominence, particularly across Asia and North America.
Guys, and that's my biggest concern, guys. You know, a lot of people refer to like the Earth being overpopulated. Guys, we're not really that overpopulated. The problem is that we tend to flock to cities, guys. I mean, I get it. I mean, you want to have everything around you at all times, right? But there's a lot of dead space on this planet, guys. We can definitely be rehabbing, well, attempting to at least rehab some of the Sahara, right? So the Sahara could be used for actual livable spaces. I mean, I get it. Water may be an issue, right? Heat may be an issue, right? But we can, if we're working on, you know, going to the depths of our oceans and going to outer space, I'm sure we have a lot more things we could do on this Earth, guys, just to be honest, right? We have places in the center of North America that basically barren, right? There's no reason for people to be able to own millions of acres of land. We can easily be, you know, portioning that out, if that makes any sense, guys, right? But yeah, we have a lot of empty space that we're just not using, and we can bypass all of this if this is a thing that you know, some people absolutely do not like looking at within the sky. I understand, right? But we have space. Let's use some of the space, guys.
As many traditional rural-based industries become automated, millions are migrating into cities and major urban areas,
volume low?
driving significant demand for residential space that is often met with high-rise structures. Europe is not immune to this phenomenon, particularly in such a heavily globalized world, and with the continent's desire to keep up with the progress and economic growth of China and the US. As such, Europe could witness a skyscraper boom in the decades ahead.
Multiple decades. But again, that would be building outside of the already, like, overpopulated mega cities that exist. I wouldn't call any of the cities in Europe mega cities, but any of the cities themselves, right? I mean, if you build outside, then, you know.
However, with entire urban centres now being declared historically significant,
that's the problem.
And with the desire to retain as much culture and architecture as possible, rightly holding strong up to the present day, the unique challenge facing future skyscraper construction in Europe is all to do with the past. If you enjoyed this video and would like to get more from the definitive video channel for construction, subscribe to the B1M.
Oh, this is a construction channel. All right. Hey, listen, I like the idea. But yeah, so Europe has an issue with history. I'm not saying that's an issue. I am absolutely in love with everything history oriented. I understand why you're not tearing down these buildings. Example, the apartment that I lived in Malaga, Spain, was 700 years old. I understand you're not tearing that down anytime soon. I get that, right? But I can only really tell you mainly about Malaga because I spent, almost a decade there, right? So if you were to build in like the surrounding areas, build up the structures, you'll kind of remove a lot of the foot traffic that floats around, say, downtown Malaga, example, right? And they could easily do that. I mean, the mountains are there. That may be a couple of issues, but you can build around things like that. I mean, you can. There's the land to actually build these mega structures if they were needed, but I don't think that they have no, they do have the population. I think Malaga has like 7 million people. They can probably build a couple of structures, bro. All right, but around the area at least. But yeah, listen. Let me know in the comments if I should be checking out any more of these type of videos. I have no issues at all, guys. Let's do that. Yeah, you guys all have an absolutely amazing day and enjoy your day thoroughly.